there's been a reminder when it comes to Quant, and it's actually based off of a post that they made themselves. Let me explain what it is, because Quant recently reminded individuals about something called flow applications, which is part of Overledger. Let me explain what this is in today's video, even though nothing I say is financial advice and I'm not telling anyone to do anything, but let's just take this into consideration. What Quant says this does is that it allows individuals to build a blockchain workflow once and then have it work across every interface automatically when it comes to user interfaces and also, let's say, in the case of AI agents. Now, it's just a very fancy way of saying that this basically, in my opinion, could very well have an aspect of AI. That's just the way I take a look at it, which I think is a net positive. Oftentimes, people just take a look at this and they're like, wow, it's so boring. Take a look at the Quant network. It's made up of the Overledger OS and the Overledger network. No one really cares about it. The adoption isn't even the best anyways. I get those arguments and I get those critiques, but then at the same time, Quant, in my opinion, I think is preparing for that hypothetical wave. Case in point, we've already seen AI become such a big narrative when it comes to stocks, but we just haven't really seen it trickle in that massive of a scale here, at least yet. But what happens if it does? And it doesn't even really need to be in that massive of a scale. Even if we just see a fraction of it trickle over into here, Quant is kind of waiting right there. So I think this is kind of like Quant preparing a little bit. Maybe. Will they succeed? We'll wait and see. But keep in mind, we're around $65 as of right now. We've seen historically Quant at one point reach approximately $430, which of course is its all-time high, which it achieved back in 2021 in September. So I get it. It's been a while now, almost 5 years ago at this point. But at the same time, back then, I didn't see all of this when it comes to Quant. Let's just take this into consideration. Quant, not that long ago, actually did something that is so massive, which for obvious reasons, a lot of people didn't talk about. What are those obvious reasons? Well, the market isn't doing the best, and then Quant doesn't have the best popularity as of right now as a result of that. But let's just take this into consideration. Quant, not too long ago, launched something called Fusion Rollup, which is actually one of the most massive things ever, at least for it, right? Not for like the space overall, but I think just for Quant, generally speaking. The reason why I say that is because if we take a look at it, Fusion Rollup is allegedly the world's first multi-ledger rollup connecting a grand total of 74 blockchain networks at the time in one unified environment, which is specifically built for institutions. So let's just let that sink in. This was just announced earlier in June, by the way. It wasn't like it was announced, years ago or anything like that. It was just announced very recently. And if we take a look at it, that would have been so massive. Like, could you imagine if they launched this back in 2021 or something like that? This would be like ridiculous in a good way. And let's just not even go that far. If let's say this was announced back in 2024 or 2025, this would be so massive. But it's not as of right now. The reason why is because, again, Quant isn't doing the best. But again, what Quant has been doing so far, it's pretty impressive in my opinion. And I think also oftentimes people like to tell me, or they like to argue with me and tell me that when it comes to Quant, who cares that it has a lower maximum supply when compared to Bitcoin? Because it actually really does. Now, let me explain this real quick. And it kind of gives a background story as to why some people sometimes like to argue with me when it comes to this. So we all know that the maximum supply when it comes to Bitcoin is 21 million. When it comes to Quant, it's around 14.8 million. So Quant's maximum supply is significantly less than Bitcoin. But oftentimes people like to tell me that, hey, you know what? When it comes to scarcity, or should I say rarity, when it comes to this space, they like to tell me that it's not the end-all be-all, which I definitely agree with, because just being simply rare doesn't really matter much if, let's say, the project isn't good fundamentally. What's the point of having something that is scarce, but it kind of does nothing, right? That's just my point of view. So I get it. It's a valid concern when people like to say, okay, the supply of Quant, when it comes to the maximum supply, it may be less than Bitcoin, but if it's no good, who cares? But I think sometimes that's where the argument falls apart a little bit, because it's not like Quant is useless. That's the thing. When it comes to Quant, again, we take a look at the Quant network. It's made up of the Overledger OS and the Overledger network. The Overledger OS allows something called a multi-chain application to be built. It's an application that is built on top of multiple blockchains instead of just one. It's a total game changer, in my opinion, in this case, maybe hypothetically, because if I could build an application that takes advantage of multiple blockchains instead of just one, it's a total game changer, especially for developers, because they no longer have to be stuck building on only just one blockchain. That's the thing. So when I take a look at the use case and I combine that with the relatively speaking, quote unquote, low maximum supply, it starts to make a little bit more sense to me. In which case, it's not just simply rare. It actually has the use case to kind of back it up. That's the thing. So it's a valid concern, yes, if it's for like a meme or a project that doesn't really do anything, but for a project that actually has that utility, that rarity is often considered a bit of a net positive, because not only is it pretty good, maybe, but then also the supply is not that high. So it's pretty impressive. Now people like to say, but yeah, take a look at it. It's around $65 as of right now. Who cares? But if we take a look at Quant, apparently some people do care, because there's over 160,000 holders. More specifically, there's around 167,000 holders. So when people like to say, oh, no one cares, well, I'm assuming at least over 100,000 individuals out there might care, or not. Why are they still holding? Some stadiums can fit nowhere near that many people. So that's pretty massive. But again, of course, that's a pure hypothetical. Quant has almost 170,000 holders, but I'm just saying, still, even if for whatever reason 50% didn't care, like if we take a look at around 80,000, that's still so massive. Like if, let's say, I stacked up 80,000 pieces of paper just in my room or something like that, that would be like really massive, right? So again, it's just a pure visualization, I guess, but I'm just saying. I think sometimes people like to diminish this because they take a look at the amount of holders when it comes to Bitcoin and Ethereum, and they like to make fun of this, and they like to say, oh, this is a joke and all this, but that's not really a fair comparison, right? Quant is never going to become more massive than Bitcoin or Ethereum, at least in the very near future, maybe in my opinion, so it's not a fair comparison. But if I just take a look at that figure in and of itself, like almost 170,000 holders, that's really a lot, you know? That's really massive. But yeah, besides that point, when it comes to Quant, I like the combination a little bit of its hypothetical scarcity, but also sort of its use case as well. Now, all this type of stuff wouldn't really matter if there is no altcoin season, but what happens if there is one? What happens if there is a market reversal? That's the thing. That's what I'm a little bit curious about, because the all-time high, again, is around $430 when it comes to Quant. We're around 7 times lower than that. So we'll wait and see. But on the flip side, when I take a look at something like this, I'm a little bit impressed that they even bothered to remind people, at least in regard to flow applications, which is part of Overledger, but also on top of that as well, what they did with Fusion Rollup not too long ago, I just thought it was so impressive. I'm still waiting, but I'll be sure to keep everyone updated as to what goes on and as to just what I'm doing personally overall. However, again, I am not telling anyone to do anything. I just want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you all have a very amazing day.